Hi everyone, today let's talk about Tesla earnings. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. So Tesla announced earnings and they are jumping massive after hours. You can see they reported a decline of 9% on revenue, which is not great. The company's been down more than 40% year to date, which is also not good as EV sales continue to slow. But you can see 11.5% after hours. They talked about how they are going to launch their new cheaper vehicle in 2025, which is going to bring in massive revenue for Tesla. At least that's the expectation. You can see earnings missed on both the top and bottom line, so that's not great either. And you can see their breakdown in revenues. Still, the vast majority is coming from automotive, some services, and then energy and storage continuing to grow slightly. But the big thing here is that it did decline in first quarter of 2024. Moving over to fear and greed, you can see we did get to a 40 here today from a 37 yesterday. A week ago we were at 37, and now we're starting to trend a little bit higher. You can see on the chart we are getting a bit of a bounce. We'll see if we end up getting that lower high, get into that 65 to 70 area, then we'll see what happens. Still seeing indicators in neutral or fear, however. Momentum still neutral, breadth and strength still in fear, put call ratio still elevated, and then you can see neutral here for volatility, which continued to fall today. Safe haven demand still extreme fear, and junk bond demand actually going further into extreme greed. Moving over to seasonality, we've been talking about it for a while. We bottomed a little bit late for the month, but the rest of the month here is supposed to be quite bullish, and then we'll see how that plays into the May period, which as a whole, May is supposed to be quite bearish, down to about a 1% move. I think we're probably going to bottom closer to the middle of May, and then you can see a double bottom setup and then a rally from there. We'll see how that plays out, but I would expect lower lows from the most recent low during that May period. Moving over to the economic calendar, you can see Visa beating on the top and bottom lines. Visa still a very strong company. Tesla missing, like we talked about. Pepsi beat on the top and bottom. GE still doing very well. UPS missed on the top line but beat on earnings. They went higher on that news. Lockheed Martin beating on the top and bottom. General Motors, they had a massive beat. You can see 50 cents on the bottom line, as well as almost 30 billion on revenue, so massive beat for General Motors. And then looking at Wednesday, don't forget we have Meta Platforms after hours tomorrow, Qualcomm, IBM, Services Now, AT&T, Boeing, General Dynamics, CME, as well as Chipotle Mexican Grill. So the earnings do not stop, they continue. And then looking at Thursday, we have Microsoft, Alphabet, Merck & Co., Caterpillar, Comcast, Intel. So massive heavy hitters after hours on Thursday as well. Moving over to the economic calendar, you can see today we did get global manufacturing PMI. That actually came in much lower than expected here, below the 50 mark and below expectations. Not great. Services PMI above 50 but below expectations. New home sales did quite well, almost 700,000, well above estimates. Previous number was revised down just a little bit, so that's not super great. And then 2-year note auction came in quite hot at almost 4.9, well above the previous read. And then looking at tomorrow, we do have core durable goods as well as the headline number here at 8:30, and that'll pretty much wrap it for tomorrow. And then looking at Thursday, we have GDP in the pre-market, and then jobless claims like always, Fed balance sheet, and 7-year note auction. Moving over to Max Payne, it moved up a little bit here to 503, stock price at 506. We talked about this being bullish. There's just so many puts and not a lot of calls. 505 is a point of resistance, but still very small at 28,000. 510, decent level there. 500, still decent. So 500 to 505 makes sense for the end of the week Friday. Moving over to the charts, starting off with the S&Ps, you can see we rallied again super aggressive here today, 1.19% to the upside, momentum still swinging to bullish, but we're starting to get into a little bit of zone resistance. You can see we cut through that 144 EMA, no issues, and then you got the 200 SMA sitting up there, 508.66. My guess is that we'll see at least a reaction from that point. We're also hitting overbought conditions here on the hourly chart, so short-term extended. We'll see how that plays tomorrow. And then looking at it on the daily chart, you can see we got above the 9, got above that 505.08 level. Next one is 509.77, pretty much right in that same zone, just a little bit behind that 200 SMA that we saw on the hourly chart. And then behind that, you have 513.26, which is right at VWAP in the 21 EMA, as well as that highly traded zone. So we'll see how it plays out. If this is a bigger topping pattern, like I tend to think that it is, then we should be getting into this zone as at least a lower high and potentially even a double top. Moving over to the tasty charts, you can see we did hit that upper ATR band, and that did start to act as as resistance. That level is 506.52, and then we grind it along that level. Typically, you do see pullbacks from that zone. We can grind along it for a while, but usually you do see pullbacks into the mid-range. You also got the 144 EMA sitting here at 503.63. So if we did see a slight pullback, retest that 144, hold that level, and then potentially rally. You also have the ATR stop there at 502.39. So bullish conditions, but a little bit extended like we saw before. And looking at the 4-hour chart, you can see we did get a reversal of conditions here today. So we got those bullish ATR stops. This is typically where you start to see resistance, even if we are going to hold that ATR move. So we got the push up, usually get a kind of mid-range, look for that higher low. And then if the move is going to continue, hold that higher low and then rally from there and start to make higher highs. So we're looking for that bottoming pattern, at least in the short term, which I do think is going to happen. Like I said, I think we'll see a couple of weeks of bullishness, but that doesn't mean we can't be a little bit overextended in the short term. Moving over to the Qs, similar thesis, even more aggressive, honestly. Rallied up super aggressive, got overbought, just like we saw on the SPY. Didn't quite hit that 144. Next level, 428.53. You can see after hours price action going higher on the Tesla move. 144 on the hourly is up at 429.27, so that gives you a little bit more upside. You can see this dip on the daily chart was a little bit deeper, so you got a little bit more room. 9 EMA at 428.18, and you can see that same move here on momentum continuing to swing to bullish. We'll see if we hit that SMA, see if anything happens on the RSI, but right now it still looks bullish. Moving over to the NASDAQ, you can see we did hit that upper ATR just like the SPY. That's currently sitting at 426.68, and then we're hovering along that 8 EMA here on the hourly chart. That's at 425.52, and then you can see the ATR stop there, 421.31. So everything in bullish conditions, starting to get through those EMAs. Again, we're still a little bit extended, just like we saw on the previous charts. And looking at it on the 4-hour chart, you can also see we did take out those ATR stops to the upside. So that does mean that we are pushing back into those bullish conditions. ATR stop on the 4-hour down at 416.20. And then if we start to push to that ATR band to the upside, that would be 431.09. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow, you can see the Russell rallied quite a bit, 1.67%, stronger than I would have expected. You can see we hit that trend line, hit the next level, 198.75, pulled back slightly at the end of the session, closed below it, but momentum RSI looks very good. You would expect this to continue to upswing, in my opinion. Similarly here on the Dow, 0.69 to the upside, momentum RSI look very good. 21 EMA getting close there at 386.61, and then my level here 387.77. So critical zone here, if it breaks through there, we're probably headed back up to those most recent highs, but definitely a zone worth paying attention to. Moving over to stocks that moved here today, we have AMD and Netflix. AMD up 2.44%. This had a massive fall. We were up around 227.50, fell all the way down to 146, right at that 144 EMA. So we touched that. We're finding a little bit of support here, gapped up and rallied. We're above that 151.18 level, so that would be your level to trade off of, and looking at 157.50 as your next resistance. RSI looking to break higher. Everything looks pretty good here on AMD for a short-term rally. And then looking at Netflix, 4.17%, massive move. You can see that fall on earnings, continuation lower. But now we did bounce really aggressive back above 559.79. You can see this gap on earnings, tested that zone, didn't fill the gap, definitely showing some bullishness there. And this seems like it could push back to that 600 level. That's where the EMAs are hanging out. And either way, that would be a pretty decent move in the short term. Moving over to the Mag 7, similarly got a bounce here, 2.5% to the upside, got back above 333.21. Tested that level yesterday, gapped through it, and then rallied. And you can see it's up after hours on that Tesla move right to that 55 EMA at 345.09. If this breaks above 349.21, that's going to look quite good. Hold that level and then potentially push to those all-time highs here for the Mag 7, and that should drive markets higher overall. Moving over to Apple and Tesla, these have been the laggards, but today they found some legs. So Apple up 0.64, back above the level, 165.71. Momentum swinging to bullish. It seems like this could potentially push back into that 170.90 area. That should help markets a little bit. Very top heavy company, and it has been quite bearish here, but this looks decent. Consolidation at a support line, critical zone, need it to hold and push back to that 170.90 level. And then Tesla, positive on the day, 1.85%. Let's go ahead and look at this on the 4-hour, and you can see that move on earnings. Massive candle, 10.32%. came right up to the trend line, so that's still an important trend line. Still very much a downtrend. Highly traded zone there, 172.40. But this seems like it's got some legs. It's definitely oversold on the longer time frames. You can see even here on the 4-hour chart, we got down to an 18 on RSI, and then we got a lower price here. And RSI there was at 1842 as well. So lower price, slightly higher RSI, and now we're rallying through back up above 152.43. And this looks decent. Again, this should give markets a little bit of fuel in my opinion. Moving over to Amazon and NVDA, you can see both of these were positive, 1.3 and 3.65%. NVIDIA had a massive day on the Monday at 4.35, and now we're continuing, getting right into that 55 and 9 EMA zone, right at the level of 843.36, critical zone there. And you can see Amazon coming off of that trend support. Seems like this is going to rally back up to 181.41, and then we'll see if we can overthrow it and get back to those highs. And if we do, you would expect sellers to be sitting at that all-time high in my opinion, and then we'll see what happens from there. Moving over to staples and discretionary, you can see staples hit the level 75.40. We talked about it yesterday. Couldn't get above it, so that is your current resistance. Momentum's bullish, RSI still bullish, but this needs to break here and hold if we're going to go higher. Momentum says it can do it, probably going to see a couple more days there, but right now we're at resistance. And then looking at discretionary, bounced 1.19% on the day, holding that 200, so we got back above that, which looked good. But going full screen here on the 4-hour chart, you can see just how much Tesla has an influence on this ETF. You can see it's up 1.13% after hours, so massive move there on the back of that Tesla move, carrying this to that next resistance, 174.76. If it gets above and holds, then we could be looking back to 180.10 in this zone of resistance up there. Moving over to transports and financials, everything continuing to rally here today. It's a bit repetitive, but everything confirming the rally indicates to me that the breadth is widening, markets are set to go higher, and that they have more steam in the tank, in my opinion. Momentum on both of these strong, RSI on both of these strong. Transports next level, 67.85, and then above that I have 69.29, and then financials headed towards those all-time highs again. 41.65 is your next resistance, and then above that you would have all-time highs at 42.21. Moving over to breadth, as you would suspect, breadth continues to rally pretty aggressively. 20-day breadth hitting the resistance. We talked about that yesterday, 36.60. Stopped pretty much right on top of it. We'll see what happens here. This is a zone where you can see resistance and a potential pullback. If we get a double bottoming style formation, kind of like here, then you could rally back through up to that 50 area. But this was a pretty deep move. We did get all the way down to that 7.75 level. Pretty significant, like I said. And it would be interesting to see if this can get all the way back into that 86.50 area. And if we do, then we could be looking for some resistance there. And then 50-day average, just continuing the move, gap through the level. So closed there yesterday, opened there today, rallied up. Momentum continuing to roll to bullish. 52.81 would be your next resistance. Moving over to yields. Yields continue to hover in the same zone for both of them. 10-year still sitting above that 455 level. 20-year still in this consolidation between about 4.9 and that 5 level. You can see that current interest rate's a little bit higher than the auction level, but really no change on yields. Moving over to the dollar. The dollar is finally breaking down like we expected it to, so you can see this consolidation of EMAs. Took a little bit of time, but finally we broke below that 200. See the big down day there, 0.41. 105.5 is your next support, and then the 21 sitting down at 105.09. Momentum rolling to bearish, RSI breaking down. Seems like this is set to go lower, and that should give equities a little bit more room to the upside. Moving over to JNK and TLT, you can see JNK up another 0.39%. We're right at the 21 in VWAP, so we'll see how that goes. 93.67 broke. We're just above that trend line here at 93.81. So still confirming rally, momentum bullish, RSI bullish. TLT on the other hand, tested resistance, still holding at that level. Makes sense with yields holding steady. Moving over to the VIX, you can see we did get another big candle down. We're right at the 21 EMA. We'll see if that holds. Technically, we're below it just by a few points. Momentum rolling to bearish, RSI more bearish. You can see 1470 makes sense as a zone of support. So we could wick that level tomorrow and then see a potential bounce from there. Otherwise, if it breaks right through and holds, that's going to be even more bullish. But right now it seems more likely that we would bounce off that 1470 level. So for tomorrow, based on the VIX, expect a higher high, but then we should pull back a little bit. We'll see how that plays. Moving over to my accounts, you can see I did quite well on the day, about $1,200. We'll see how much of that is true. You can see the Qs are up after hours at 426. I don't know if that's being factored into my share price here, but I did add more shares, 400 shares here now. Still have a covered call for tomorrow at 426. Had Had the puts here that I rolled up to 422 for 96 cents, so $200 on that. And then you can see small profit on the calls for tomorrow, 46. Max profit there is going to be 427.33. And then that call that I had that was pretty long dated, I rolled that down and in to 425 for $4.59. And then I bought those shares to turn that into a little bit longer dated covered call. So looking to collect about $900 on that position over the next 7 days. If this continues to rally, we'll see how it plays out. Overall, still bullish. I also picked up an IWM position covered call for 198 tomorrow for $1.14. And then looking at that, you can see it's up just a little bit after hours, so that should be in good shape. And now with these daily covered calls, I can roll these out each day in my IRA. So looking good going into tomorrow's session. Let me know down in the comment section what you think of Tesla and where markets are headed tomorrow. How many more days can we just go straight up before we have any kind of pullback? Definitely like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video, and make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.